Hello and welcome. I'm Kamla. My guest today is filmmaker David Lowery. He wrote, directed and edited a ghost story that stars Casey Afleck and Rooney Mara. Here's a clip from the film and then our interview with David Lowery.
When I was little, we used to move all the time. I would write these notes, and I would fold them up really small, and I would hide them.
What'd they say?
They were just like things I wanted to remember, so that if I ever wanted to go back, there'd be a piece of me there waiting.
Did you see too much? All the awful dreams felt real at night. Did you know that she waking up? Did she die in the night? Leave you alone.
What is it you like about this house so much?
History? No place like home. That's a business.
So, welcome to San Francisco.
Oh, thank you. I'm excited to be here.
A ghost story. How did the idea come?
It came about because I really wanted to make a movie about a ghost in a house with a bedsheet over his head.
Okay.
That was the image that compelled me.
Okay, but it also sounds like a book that you read as a kid. Gus was a ghost.
Gus the Friendly Ghost. That was sort of, I wonder if that was my first introduction to ghosts as a child. It was a series of books from, I don't know when, but about 1960s, about a ghost living in a house with a baby ghost and a lot of other ghosts, and it was one of my favorite books growing up.
You know, after I read about that, I actually went and read up Gus Was a Ghost.
Oh, you found it?
I found it because I didn't read those books when I was young. It's a very American...
Right, yeah. And it's also very interesting that both that book and then also Casper the Friendly Ghost are children's entertainment, but when you start to think about them, they're very unsettling. Like the idea of a ghost having a baby ghost, there's a lot of darkness to that you just don't think about as a kid.
But the darkness doesn't come through though, because,
no.
You know, as a kid...
You don't think about it.
Yes,
yeah.
Yes. What I was reminded of was Elliot in E.T.
Oh yeah.
That's what I was thinking about when I saw Ghost. I said, I wonder whether you were inspired by Elliot.
Completely. That was the second movie I ever saw as a child at a movie theater, and was one of my favorite movies, and has inspired me in all sorts of ways throughout my career. But definitely, when he puts that bedsheet on, that's one of the most defining images of a bedsheet ghost in movie history.
Yeah. And what was the first movie you saw as a kid?
Pinocchio.
Okay. I hear, because you write a blog, and somewhere you've mentioned that as a 7-year, I think in your blog you have shared the first script that you wrote as a 7-year-old.
Yes, I wrote this, it wasn't the first one, but I wrote several when I was 7, and there was one that was a science fiction movie that I found the screenplay for. It still exists, but the movie I made before that was actually a ghost movie where my brother wore a bedsheet, so okay. It all ties back to ghosts and bedsheets for me.
Okay, so this is a very interesting film, and I'm going to quote you because in your own blog you've quoted, and it perfectly describes what I felt after I saw the movie. You say, the almost finished product is strange and challenging and leaves me with a feeling I can't quite describe. I made it and it still surprises me every time I watch it. I think you talked about a ghost story. That was exactly my feeling. I said, what is this film about, you know? I wanted to know what is going to happen next. What is going to happen next? And then suddenly, I'm not going to give it away, it took an unexpected turn. But it evoked all these emotions. And I'm like, you have described exactly what I felt after I saw the movie. How would you describe the movie now?
I still sort of subscribe to that because it's almost, you know, it's difficult for me to talk about because it was such a strange emotional experience to realize that I'd made something that evoked emotions I hadn't anticipated. But I do ultimately find that it's a very comforting movie. It has all sorts of provocations and left turns and unexpected developments in the story, but at the end of the film, the one thing that I'm left with is a sense of comfort and peace. And I hope that that is not just me that feels that. I hope that there's some degree of universality in how it leaves people feeling. And as challenging and as different and unusual as the movie is, I do hope that it makes people happy.
Yes, it does, I think, it helps you understand about time.
Definitely. That's something I spend a lot of time thinking about, and making this movie was a way to in some ways rationalize and explore my own ideas about the passage of time and how it changes us and affects us.
Why are you so obsessed with time? I saw your short film, Pioneer.
Oh yeah.
And the ghost story reminded me a little bit of it.
Yeah,
There's some similarities.
I love the way things change over the course of time, and history is a part of that. Whether it's the history of, you know, a single day or of a millennia, like the history of something is the chronicle of one place or person or time across time. And of course, humans have a very finite amount of time, and our place in history as individuals is very small. But I love the idea of potentially transcending that and getting to exist beyond that. And whether that's in the afterlife, or in the case of Pioneer with his bedtime story, a character who it is just a bedtime story, but he's telling a story about existing for centuries and setting aside.
But it's also a little dark.
Oh, definitely it's dark. But time does have that. Like there's tragedy implicit in the passage of time because things change, and the very chemical process of like on a chemical level, change is a violent and disruptive, you know, thing that can occurrence, and time forces that to happen. It forces that violence, even on a molecular level. It's very confrontational. It's a very confrontational part of life, and it's very unsettling and uncomfortable. But it is an inevitable part of life, and unfortunately, we can't change the rules of time or bend the rules of time, or at least physics doesn't allow us to yet. But because it has so much because it defines our lives so thoroughly and defines the world around us so thoroughly, I feel it's important to spend time thinking about it and considering it and exploring it, and this movie is my way of doing that. So
it took you literally a few days to write this. You had it as a 10-pager, 30-pager, and you said you like to talk about time and how there's tragedy implicit. How long did it take for you to write that disruptor? I'm not going to give the story away. Who talks about revolution, even time expands and contracts. You know who I'm talking about.
Yep. Yeah, I mean, it took me a couple hours. It's hard to say exactly. I mean, I wrote it. It just came out. I wrote it, and I love writing monologues. And I made, you know, a film called Pioneer that we talked about with the same actor, and that was also written in one sitting. And so writing monologues comes easily to me, and it doesn't take me that long to get something like that out on paper. And then I'll refine it and make it better and try to make it feel more like a scene from a movie as opposed to just me spewing a bunch of words on paper. But it was part of that initial process of writing, where it just took a couple days to write the script, and that scene probably only took an hour to write. It's tough for me to say, but that doesn't mean it was easy, but it came out quickly.
Okay. You like to contextualize things. That's a word I've heard you use in
I probably use it too much. Yeah, definitely.
So
I do.
In this film, when I watched, I thought of Dallas because I've just visited Dallas, and when you show the new buildings coming about, I was just reminded of Dallas and how relentlessly it's expanding, the outskirts
Completely.
of Dallas. Is that what you wanted reflected in the film when you show the new building coming up? I'm not going to give the story.
Yeah, but definitely, like, you know, I live in an old house, and the house I live in now is, you know, going to be preserved because it's in a historical neighborhood, but most of Dallas's history is getting knocked down and turned into condos, and that is happening all across the country. That consistent urban development is happening everywhere, all around the world, in fact. And I don't think that that's necessarily a tragedy to see an old house get knocked down and turn into something. That's just time doing its thing, as we talked about before. And I wanted that to be part of this. I wanted to watch how time affects a space. And the way time affects a space right now is development and urban development. And so that's definitely something I see happening in the world around me, and I wanted that to be part of this because I feel it's something that people are very used to seeing at this point. They're used to seeing that happen. and yet you don't usually think about what those buildings used to be or what might have happened on the land that that building used to occupy. And those are the types of things that I like to think about.
So I thought the film was told from the perspective of a ghost and a house.
Mm-hmm.
Why was it not called The Ghost Story? Why a ghost story?
Well, he's just one of many. You know, there is another ghost in the
Yes,
movie.
there are more than
Yeah, and I didn't want to make it feel like this was exclusive to him. I feel there's a universality to the movie, and I feel that by being non-specific with our article in the structure of the title helps make it feel more approachable and more open and more inclusive of not just the characters in the film, but of the audience as well.
What has the film taught you?
It's taught me to not fight with my wife about where we're going to live, and to trust that she usually is right in those situations. It's taught me to, it's helped me learn how to it's helped me learn how to understand the work that I'm putting out into the world and what I do, whether it's films or anything else that I do. It's helped me contextualize, to use a word that I like, the work that I do. And that is something that was, you know, kind of, it was problematic to me for a while. I didn't understand what the point of doing anything was, and I was having a relatively profound existential crisis, and this movie helped me overcome that.
David, thank you so much.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate it.
And best of luck with the movie.
Thank you.
Thanks for watching. If you missed any of our shows, you can catch them on our YouTube channel. We'll be back again next week with another edition of our show. Until then, goodbye.